Welcome back to another episode of Fox West Texas Sports Unscripted. I'm your host, Casey Buscher, now joined by KVUE sports reporter Jake Garcia. Jake, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yes. So, Jake, whenever I'm looking at your Twitter page in quarantine, it seems like you're doing a lot of these shelter in place. Is that what it is? Shelter in shape packages.
That's correct. Yes.
How did you come up with that?
It was actually super interesting. I woke up one morning knowing that I needed to start to really be creative to find story ideas, and woke up one morning with a group text that was started with my dad, my uncle, and my sister, and they were like, "Hey, today I'm gonna see how long it takes me to do 100 burpees," and I was like, "That sounds terrible, but I'll do it." And as I start to get ready to do these 100 burpees, I see my camera equipment in the corner, and I'm like, I should film this because what else am I going to be doing today other than a workout? And so I was like, you know what? I should make this a segment. And it started off as a nightly segment. It's kind of turned into a once a week type thing. But I guess the inspiration behind it was just to say, look, we're all kind of stuck inside right now. That doesn't mean that you can't continue to stay active and fit and healthy. And I guess the big takeaway that I want people to have from it is you don't have to be doing CrossFit workouts or running 15 miles. Just do something to stimulate your mind, stimulate your body, to make sure that we're not all slowly going crazy while the shelter-in-place order is in effect.
Yeah, and for you as a sports reporter, with there being no sports, this is something interesting that you've come up with. How has this time been over the last few months, just trying to be creative with story ideas and, trying to pitch probably sports stories, but also helping out in news, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I don't want to minimize just how much I miss sports, because I do, and I love going to games, and I love covering practices and all the things that come with actual sports. But at the same time, part of the reason why I picked this job is I always considered myself someone who doesn't need a game to tell a good story. Sports exists in many different areas of life. And so I always considered myself a storyteller before a sports reporter. And so that was something that I just really tried to tap into when this all started, when I was brainstorming ideas of how the heck I was going to get through this time without sports, while also showing that there are still people doing athletic things and still stories that are worth telling in this time. So I'm not going to say that it hasn't been hard or difficult or that I wish things would go back to normal, because I do, but I think it's forced a lot of people to be their most creative versions of themselves and really think outside the box in terms of how are we going to get through this when there aren't games being played.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point, and it's so important to focus more on storytelling rather than just the box score when it comes to being a sports reporter. But okay, so a typical day on the job. Most people, see your position and they're like, okay, wow, really glamorous. He's on TV all the time. He gets to cover the Longhorns. He gets to cover College game day, all the cool stuff, right? But what's a typical day on the job that people may not realize or know about?
Yeah, and I'm assuming you're talking about pre-coronavirus.
Yes, pre-coronavirus.
Right? Well, I guess it depends what time of the season it is. In the heart of football season, every single day there is something Longhorns related that we're doing, whether it be a Tom Herman press conference or player availability on Tuesday, coordinator availability on Wednesday. So I guess the day starts even before I wake up. It starts the night before when I start doing all my prep when it comes to the questions that I hope to have answered that day, the angle that I'm going into each day with. And then from there, it's going to these availabilities, going on campus, talking to players, talking to coaches, and then from there, getting my questions answered and putting together a story that I think is most valuable for that day. It's not glamorous, like you said. On the surface, it definitely is, because I'm covering a major Division I program that people here treat like their professional sports team, and I love every second of it. With that being said, I am my own cameraman, I'm my own editor, I'm my own writer, voicer, anchor. So it's really a one-man band type of ordeal, and I think a lot of people are surprised when I tell them that, especially, I guess, when I do a story that maybe it's on someone who hasn't had that level of media exposure before, and they're like, oh, it's just you? I was like, yeah, I do everything. I'm the one who's shooting the video. I'm the one who's asking the questions. But honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way. I think just because I have gone the past 3, 4, 5 years doing it all myself, if I had someone doing it for me, I would be like, no, I want it done this way. Here, give me the camera, or let me edit that piece of video.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. And so let's talk about a little bit about your journey. So you went to school at Arizona State, started in Oregon in your first market job, and then you come to Austin. What's the journey been like, and what are your biggest takeaways just along the way to get to this point in Austin?
The journey's been super rewarding. My senior year of college was faced with a question that has really defined, I guess, the past 3, 4 years of my career, and that's, was I going to go into TV sports reporting, or was I going to do baseball play-by-play? So minor league type stuff, media relations, being, I guess, the media head for a minor league baseball team. And I decided that, I had just spent 4 years at Arizona State learning a curriculum that was designed to teach me how to be a TV sports reporter. And while I thought I was pretty good at baseball play-by-play, I never had actually gotten formal education or actual validation that, yeah, you are pretty good. Whereas for TV sports reporting, I had gotten that validation. And I was like, it makes no sense to just disregard the past 4 years of my education and do something that I think I'm good at, but I don't know for sure. So I chose TV sports reporting, and I've loved every second of it. I think that there is so much to learn from a small market experience. And a lot of people that scares them away from the job initially. They don't want to go to a part of the country that no one's ever heard of before. They don't want to be covering high school and really small college level sports. And I think if you can take a step back from that and realize that, like, this is a necessary step that you have to take in order to reach covering a D1 team, covering a professional sports team in the capacity that I want to. Because I for sure could have been like a blogger or something like that. And I think there's definitely a space for that. But, I wanted to be on camera. I wanted to be a television reporter. And the way to get there is to put in the time in a small market. And I understand that, there's a financial situation as well that maybe some people can't afford to take that route initially, because, like we mentioned, the jobs aren't glamorous. They're not super high paying. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if that's something that you're able to do, for me, it was such a rewarding experience, because I developed relationships with people in Southern Oregon that made me a better storyteller and forced me to not so much tell a story about who won or lost the game, but tell a story about the emotions of the people in the game or behind whatever it is that I just witnessed. Yeah. So that was the biggest thing that I learned in Oregon, and I'm trying my best to carry it over in Austin.
So what were some of the key things that you learned in Oregon? While it probably wasn't an easy time, you're in the smaller market, trying to get creative with stories because there isn't a team like the Texas Longhorns there that just you're covering every single day. What were some of those key takeaways that you still use in Austin today?
I think the first one was learning how to develop relationships with people who then you can go back to as sources. That's really something, in my opinion, that isn't taught super well in college, just because they have a million other different things to teach you. So I came into that job knowing how to shoot video, how to edit video, how to write. And while I got better and better at each of those things, the longer I did it, something that I had really never thought of before was, how am I going to be one of the faces of a sports department that every single day is responsible for putting out stories or breaking news or reacting to news. When something major happens, say like an iconic figure in that sports community passes away, how am I going to be able to react quickly enough to get the people that I need to talk to, having them trust me as someone who is going to be empathetic to the situation, and also get out the message that we're trying to convey. So I think just learning how to really tap into those pool of resources and connections was something that was super important. It's harder to do in a bigger market like Texas, or like Austin rather, and a huge entity that is the Longhorns, because they're closed off. They want the message coming out of there to be all from the University of Texas, and I understand it. I really do. So how can I carve out a space for myself that I guess it's a small market approach in a bigger market, and it's all designed to get those stories out, react to news, develop sources so that we're the ones breaking news.
So for you, when you left college, I'm sure you had this maybe a dream that you ultimately wanted to. What was the dream that you kind of like wanted long term in your career?
When I was a little kid, I always wanted to anchor SportsCenter. That was my goal. I think it was probably everyone's goal. By the time I graduated college, I was so invested in baseball that I thought, I wanted my own show on MLB Network, or I wanted to host a studio show about baseball on Fox Sports or whatever. And honestly, now that long-term dream kind of changes every single day. Some days I wake up and I'm like, I still want to be a SportsCenter anchor. Other days I'm like, well, maybe my job doesn't exactly exist yet, just because the media landscape always changes so rapidly. So at this point, I'm just trying to be as best as I can every single day, and hopefully that continues to take me to bigger markets and hopefully one day a network. But what that looks like long term, I don't really know right now.
But for you in this market, it's a bigger market. You're enjoying it. How do you stay focused on the day-to-day grind of what you have to do, getting stories, being in Austin, soaking up that market that you're in right now, but also staying driven to continue growing within the industry down the line?
Yeah, it's definitely a balance that you have to walk. And my strategy for the past few years or so has been, okay, just put your head down for a year and a half, and pour all of your energy and your attention and your focus into being the best at this job as you possibly can. And then you'll get noticed. And then you can start sending out your tape to other news directors, stuff like that. For me, I've never been super into connections in terms of like elevating yourself within the industry. They're wildly important, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I think my biggest focus has always been put your head down, do the job to the best of your abilities, and connections will come. And so far they have. I mean, obviously there's still room for improvement. I'd like to get better in that aspect, but it's an approach that hasn't let me down at this point.
I like that a lot. And for students that are just now graduating in May or December, kind of struggling to find a job right now, especially that want to go into the sports industry when there's no sports and it's a little bit scary. So what are some pieces of advice that you would give to them if you were in their shoes right now trying to find a job in the industry?
First of all, keep your head up and stay strong, because this is unprecedented. This is something that I didn't have to deal with. So I don't even know if I'm qualified to speak on this, just because as I try and put myself in their shoes, I couldn't imagine what it would be like to go through something like this. I know for a fact that I probably wouldn't have been hired as a sports reporter in Market 136 out of college if there were no sports going on. And so as I try and think about what my reaction to that would have been, it's probably decide what it is that you want to do. If it is TV reporting, say yes to a news opportunity. There's so many people who start off in this industry as a TV news reporter and then eventually move to sports. My coworker did it. So many of the reporting skills that are necessary to be the best sports reporter possible have a backbone in news reporting. So if it is truly reporting that you're passionate about, say yes to an opportunity like that, because those are going to give you the skills that you need to one day accomplish your dream of being a sports reporter. So I guess the biggest thing is decide what it is that you like. Do you like sports or do you like reporting? Eventually those two paths are going to meet, but right now they can't meet because there are no sports going on. So in order to get there, you got to say yes to an opportunity that maybe puts you out of your comfort zone.
I like that. That's great advice. Okay, so I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Let's do it.
Okay, so favorite player ever, it could be any sport.
Favorite player ever, any sport, probably Tiger Woods.
That's good. Why?
Growing up, there's something nostalgic looking back on it. Sitting on my couch on a Saturday or Sunday with my dad watching Tiger just completely annihilate the competition. He made golf for me really fun, and whenever I would watch him, I would always want to go out and play golf myself. Whenever he wasn't playing to me, there was no reason why I needed to watch because it wasn't exciting. He brought energy and emotion and passion into a game that kind of desperately needs it at times, and that really drew me to him.
I love that. Special talent that you have that most people maybe don't know about.
I can name the capital of any given state faster than any competitor. So like if you were to say a state right now, I can name the capital faster than you or 90% of people.
Delaware.
Dover.
Wow, that was good. I didn't even know it was Dover. Let's see. Favorite team ever.
Favorite team ever. So I grew up a fan of the Denver Broncos and also kind of secondly the San Francisco 49ers, the Lakers, and the San Francisco Giants. And really the only one of those that has stuck with me throughout my entire 25 years of life has been the Giants. So I'm a diehard San Francisco Giants baseball fan.
Love that. Let's see. Favorite part of your job?
Favorite part of my job? I think it's something really small, but it just makes me really happy and gets me really fired up. It's when I'm writing a script and either I find the perfect way to lead into a reveal or a perfect way to end the story that just feels so powerful, so concise, so simple. And I love looking at it on the script. I love listening to it over and over again. I've always enjoyed writing. So whenever I'm able to tie a story or a package perfectly together with good writing, that's my favorite part of the job.
I love that. Hardest part of your job?
Hardest part of the job. Wow. I think the hardest part is when there are actually sports going on, making sure that I, as much as possible, carve out a place for my reporting to make it on air. And what I mean by that is on some days there are 3 of us in the sports department working. In my last job, there would be a max of 2, most days just 1. The amount of time we get in every single show isn't a lot. So how do we all come together and work together. Filling the time is easy. It's how do I squeeze myself into that time to make sure that I continue to get better on a daily basis. Because it would be super easy to go to Texas availabilities, interview players, cut a few sound bites, put those in the show, and call it a day. But I don't want to do that because that's not going to make me better. That's not going to be rewarding long term. So it's just carving out a place for myself every single day and making sure that I'm sticking up for my stories and making sure that complacency is never something that we fall back on.
Mm-hmm. Favorite interview anyone that you've gotten to interview? Favorite interview.
Wow.
Also, I saw your interview with Maria Taylor and it was so good.
You thought so?
I did it all live. I was like, dang, how did he perfectly? It was so good.
It was, so the story behind that interview really quick. For one, I had gotten probably 3 or 4 hours of sleep because we had gone from our high school football Friday show, which ends at 11. And then obviously we're staying there cutting stuff for the website and social media. So I got home at 12, 12:30, went to bed. College game day starts at 6 a.m. I had to be there well before that to make sure we got parking and was set up and everything. So very minimal sleep. I was really tired. And she was on the ESPN College game day truck, and the studio was, or the set rather, maybe 200 yards away. I positioned myself right in between the two of them. And she knew that I was there hoping to interview her. But as she walks off the bus and is heading towards the set, she's like, okay, I got 2 minutes or whatever it was. So we had to perfectly time them taking the shot live to her walking up to me being like, okay, here we go. Starting to ask questions.
That's a lot of pressure. You could not mess that up.
Right. Because not only was I concerned about making sure that the interview was good, but it was also telling the producers, okay, she's walking up now, take me. And then also, hey Maria, look, we're starting this interview right now.
Yeah.
So, now that you say that, I guess that's one of my favorite interviews for sure. Another one that I really enjoyed was talking to a former Texas basketball coach recently. His name's Leon Black. He was in a lot of ways instrumental in helping the basketball team break the color barrier, and really instrumental with one guy in particular named Jimmy Blacklock, coach of the Harlem Globetrotters. His son played football at TCU. So when Jimmy Blacklock was in Austin with the Globetrotters, they were enshrining him in their Ring of Honor, making him what they call a legend. And Leon Black was at the game. I had called him a few days before saying, I'm looking to interview you at this game just about your time coaching Jimmy. Would you be open to it? And sure enough, he was. I found him courtside. This was before the game, so I set up my tripod literally in the stands. I'm sitting right next to him, asking him questions, and it turned out really good.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. Favorite sports book?
Favorite sports book? I got two. One that I don't even know if it really qualifies as a typical sports book, but it's my favorite book of all time, and it's called Into Thin Air by John Krakauer. It's about this group of people summiting Mount Everest. And the entire time I was on the edge of my seat because, as I'm sure you know, climbing Mount Everest is exceptionally dangerous. And so a lot of the times you're not sure if they're going to survive whatever obstacles in front of them. I consider that a sport. So that's my favorite book of all time. I also really enjoyed I think it's called The Last Shot. It's a book about March Madness. I want to say it's The Last Shot. I also could have The Last Dance stuck in my head. Or maybe it's Best Shot. Can I look it up really quick?
Yeah, of course.
I want to give you the correct answer here.
I like to ask that question because I want to read more good books. So
yes.
Have you read Craig Sager's memoir?
I have not. No.
So good. You should read
Yeah, I will have to. It is Last Shot.
it. Okay, cool.
It's a book about March Madness, about this reporter covering March Madness, and about a scandal that is going on, a betting scandal that's going on simultaneously, and his path towards uncovering that scandal. I don't think I think it's a fiction book, pretty sure. It's been a while since I read it, but another one of those books that just has you on the edge of your seat the entire time.
Those are the best.
Yeah.
Favorite sports movie or documentary?
Favorite sports movie or documentary?
That's tough.
Yeah, I never know how to answer this question just because there are a lot that come to mind and also a lot that I haven't seen. Sandlot is for sure up there, just again because I'm big on the whole nostalgia thing, because I felt like I had a version of the Sandlot growing up. So that's probably 1A, and then Hoosiers maybe 1B.
Yes, that's good. That's good. Are you liking The Last Dance?
I'm loving it. For me, it's super educational, not only about Michael Jordan's career. A lot of the things I felt like I had heard before about Michael Jordan, but it's super educational to kind of put that time of the NBA in perspective and in context, to let us know the power struggle going on between Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and Clyde Drexler and the Detroit Pistons being the bad boys and all that sort of thing. Like, those are all things that I knew, but I didn't know how they fit into Michael Jordan's career like I do now.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I mean, I was born in 96. So like just to see this, how powerful he was just throughout the world is crazy. But okay, if you haven't already, 30 for 30, Dennis Rodman, 30 for 30 Bad Boys. It's so good. And it goes straight in depth of like both of their careers. So
I've seen the Dennis Rodman one. I haven't seen the Bad Boys one.
I love the Dennis Rodman one.
He's just a fascinating character. So any like form of storytelling around him, I'm all in on.
The whole time I was like glued to the TV. I'm like, did he really do that? Like, what?
Yeah.
He's awesome. Okay, and then what's the first thing you're doing post-quarantine when everything's back to normal?
Getting a haircut.
Yes.
I'm holding off though. I know that in Texas, barbershops are opening soon. Holding off just because, one, I don't feel exactly comfortable yet going to one. I don't want to be a reason why things may get worse. Don't know if they are going to get worse, but I don't even want to have that weighing on my mind. I am very much like digging the slow grow of my afro that I had when I was a little kid. But as soon as hopefully like June hits, I'm going to be getting a haircut. And I'll be very, very grateful that barbershops exist.
Yes, I cannot wait. It's crazy how quick we opened up stuff, but
I know.
Their own. But okay, and then just to end this all, if you could maybe pick like one or two stories, your favorite stories that you've gotten to tell so far in your career.
So the first one that jumps to mind is this story that I did fairly recently. It was on a high school baseball coach and his two adopted children. He has 4 kids, 2 that he and his wife gave birth to, and then 2 that they adopted. And so like the whole premise of the story was, it was at the start of April. So for him, this was going to be the peak of the high school baseball season. And he really wasn't expecting to be at home this time of the year. And he told me on camera, this is probably the most time I've gotten to spend with my kids the past 3 years combined during this time of the year. And I was like, what has that done for you and your family? Has it brought you guys closer together? And he said, yeah, like it's very much put in perspective just how much my family means to me. The time I'm getting to spend with them is just unbelievably rewarding. And so like on the surface, like that's a great story. But what made it just super visually compelling was that they have this backyard wiffle ball park that he created for them. They go outside every single morning and for an hour or two play a game of wiffle ball. And it's the two boys against two girls. And it had everything you look for in a good story, good TV story. Super visual, compelling characters, an amazing message, and people who were just excited for the time that they got to spend together.
I love that. That's so good. Yeah, quarantine isn't all bad. You can have good stories like that.
Exactly. And honestly, like, that's when I approached this entire time, I wanted to both strike a balance between people who were or had been adversely affected by it and tell their stories, but also knowing that, like, after a certain point in time, people are going to get tired of that. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to get tired of telling those, man, we're really disappointed stories. So it's also finding the uplifting stories like that one.
Yeah, that's so special. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.